Welcome, seekers of hidden knowledge, to the mystical realm of the occult. Delve into the secrets of the universe as we journey together into the enigmatic world of ancient wisdom. Brought to you by your guide through the shadows of enlightenment, Wisdom Rocker. Uncover the mysteries, unlock the power, and journey with us as we explore the hidden depths within the pages of forgotten scrolls and ancient texts. Prepare to embark on a journey beyond the ordinary, where wisdom transcends time and knowledge is your greatest ally. Welcome to Wisdom Rocker. Prepare to awaken your inner sage. In this video, we will be uncovering the wisdom within the chapters of
The Theosophical Seal, a study for the student and the non-student, by Arthur M. Kuhn, with an introduction by James S. Perkins. This book is dedicated to all searchers for wisdom. 1958. Book 4. The Serpent. Chapter 18. The Serpent Swallowing Its Tail. We leave the serpent in its symbolic aspect of evil and sin, Satan and the devil, and in its more occult sense as the divine healer and divine wisdom, and we approach an entirely new phase expressed in the symbol of the serpent swallowing its own tail. Up to now, the serpent has been very personal in his relations with man. He has entered the field of religion, of morality, of the spiritualization of man's own inner nature, and the healer and bringer of divine wisdom. There is nothing personal or religious in this new symbol, except only as man and religion may be interested in the eternal and the infinite. We enter a realm of purely speculative philosophy. If we would try to describe the meaning of the serpent in the act of swallowing its own tail, we would use these two words, eternity and infinity. These two words, however, require certain definitive qualifications. What can the human mind know of eternity and infinity except that one embodies a very long time and the other extends to, and beyond, the limits of our comprehension? Many great minds have wrestled with this idea of eternity and infinity and their relations with time and space, and it would be folly to presume to do more than what has already been so adequately done. For these two ideas, unending time and immeasurable space, present many problems to our minds, not immediately apparent. To say that time and space are illusions and eternity and infinity are realities does not solve the problem. In fact, except for those mystics who dream of escaping from this objective world, this idea only adds confusion to our thinking. For if time and space are illusions, then the whole manifested universe has neither reality nor purpose. Indeed, we might say that time and space came into being with manifestation. We are thinking here of physical manifestation, for there must be other dimensions of being requiring new codes of measurement. First of all, we consider this symbol of the serpent swallowing its tail as a circle. A circle immediately establishes in our mind something fixed and limited. However extended the circumference, it is something which the mind can comprehend. It becomes the boundary of a universe, the ring pass not beyond which that universe may not extend, or the time cycle setting the limits of the endurance of a universe. The Hindus called this time cycle a manvantara or a mahamanvantara. The circle limits or sets aside a certain field in the cosmos in which a solar logos may bring forth and evolve his particular universe. Vast as that universe may be, so long as the human mind conceives of it in terms of space and time, it must have its limits, its circumference. It must also be true that, however long the manvantara or mahamanvantara great cycle, there must come a time of dissolution, which the Hindus term pralaya, or period of rest and cessation of cosmic activity. We shall consider this idea of recurring cycles of manifestation presently. Certainly space and time, as represented by the circle, are measurable and therefore limited. Time. The serpent swallowing its own tail symbol presents an entirely different concept. There is the idea of the finite being swallowed by the infinite, of time being swallowed by the eternal. This brings to mind a story from ancient mythology. Kronos, god of time, son of Uranus and Gaia, heaven and earth, is said to have swallowed his children. Saturn, his Latin counterpart, was known as Father Time. We are aware, of course, that all things which have their origin in time are thus eventually swallowed by their own father. And yet the question might be asked, if time came into being with manifestation, how can it cease to be so long as manifestation exists? The answer must be that time is an aspect of manifestation. If in God's omniscience the beginning and end, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending are perceived as one, then to any lesser consciousness this whole would be seen only in part, and part succeeding part, unrolling in time, as the unwinding of a film in a cinema. Time is the sequence whereby whatever exists in the eternal, that is, as potential ideation, emerges into objectivity. The eternal, by its very nature, never began and can never end, else its name is a contradiction. Time must be a segment of the eternal, and if one be given the status of reality, the other imposes upon that reality merely its own limitations. Man might be said to be living in two worlds at once. He lives in the eternal now, containing within him the image of what he shall be. He lives also in the world of time, becoming and evolving into the fulfillment of that image. When the serpent shall have swallowed its tail, the circle of becoming shall have disappeared into the point of being. Space and time are always spoken of in the same breath, and in fact one is inconceivable without the other. We can hardly think of distance without at the same time thinking of duration, and duration implies speed, which brings us back again to the idea of time. Space is in a sense more readily understandable than time, at least time in the abstract, because it deals with physical things. It is that unknown substance which theoretically exists everywhere between objects regardless of distance, and in which all objects exist. A dweller in the ocean might conceive of the water in which he swims as space, yet that space is an infinitesimal part of the great sea, which extends for incalculable distances. It is difficult to think of space as extending into infinity without at the same time conceiving the probability of heavenly bodies as occupying limitless distances in it. Science today visualizes a universe which is in rapid motion, ever expanding, every particle, small or great, moving progressively outward along countless radii toward circumferences which are themselves expanding into infinity. The term "our expanding universe" has become a popularly accepted idea. Sir James Jeans suggests that all of the nebulae are receding from us at tremendous speeds. Yet he is inclined to think that they are not moving through space but with space, and expresses the concept of space as everywhere expanding uniformly. He asserts not only is space almost inconceivably large, but is continually becoming larger. Mr. Fred Hoyle, several years later, in trying to explain how space can be infinitely expanding forever, makes this momentous statement: "I find myself forced to assume that the nature of the universe required continuous creation, the perpetual bringing into being of new background material." In other words, he says that new space or matter is continuously being created. Coming from an exponent of the most modern scientific thought, this statement is most significant. However, he leaves unanswered the question, where does this background material come from, and by what agency is it created? Science now recognizes the fact that the matter of our universe is not fixed and static, but that there is a continuous flow, we should say ebb and flow, of what we think of as force into matter, and vice versa. Let us consider this thought for a moment. We know that what is commonly called matter is made up of incalculable numbers of atoms which are themselves composed of swiftly revolving lines of some kind of force or energy. We are told that an atom resembles a miniature solar system with its protons and electrons in rapid rotation in relatively astronomical orbits. There is nothing solid in the old sense of the word. The borderline between matter and energy is certainly a variable one. In the light of this accepted fact, it is but an easy step towards the conclusion that matter and energy or spirit have a common origin, that they are the opposite poles of one reality. We may say that spirit is in a continuous process of becoming matter, and that matter reciprocally flows back into spirit. The door of exit and entrance from either state of existence to the other must be a point so minute that it can be recognized only mathematically. Figuratively, it might be said that the objective world is literally being swallowed by the point symbolically expressed as the serpent swallowing its tail. We push our inquiry beyond the limitations of scientific knowledge, and we enter a field in which the measure of the truth or reality of our findings must be the degree in which they are co-related with the highest reaches of our thinking. Our search leads us out of the objective world of sense perceptions into the subjective realm of consciousness, where the intuition must replace the outer senses in making appraisal of the rationality of our judgments. This is a realm, too, in which judgment must be limited by the intellectual background and capacity of each individual mind. The problems of truth and reality at once present themselves. What is reality? We perceive that what is real to one may not be real to another, and what is real at one time may be unreal at another. The whole universe, including ourselves, is constantly changing. Is evolution a movement from unreality toward a goal of reality? Can the human mind know truth, or can truth be realized only when one has attained ultimate reality? Philosophy and religion have wrestled with these problems and have presented many conflicting answers. The true, or let us say the truest answer, must be that which integrates the known facts of the objective world with our highest concepts in the world of consciousness, an understanding of which must resolve most of our problems. And, as is usually the case, the answers to many of man's most puzzling problems are often so simple as to be overlooked entirely. Let us put this idea to the test. An answer so simple as to dissolve all complexities might be stated: all things come from God, who is the ultimate source of every phase of existence. Could any statement be simpler? It is almost naive, childish. Let us analyze it. It would be inconceivable to think of anything in the universe without a causation. Yet, if we push an effect back to its cause and backwards through an ever-receding series of causes, we must ultimately come to that causeless cause. We postulate that which is behind all manifestation. Wanting a better name, we call it absolute being. To this being, beingness would be a better word. There can be no attribute, description, or name. No adjective can modify or qualify it. The ancients called it that. Having neither form nor shape, it exists everywhere and throughout all eternity. Dwelling alone upon the divine plane, there is contained within it the potency and measure of all conceivable forms. Dwelling equally on all planes below its own, it endows all forms with potency and life. Pervading and penetrating all things, it is both immanent and transcendent. Infinite and eternal, it is the source and origin of both time and space. And yet it is far from us neither in time nor space, for it pervades every particle of our being and consciousness. Having neither beginning nor ending, every moment of our life is part of its eternity. No particle of matter is too dense or too ethereal, but that it has its very existence in this absoluteness. Could any concept be more simple or yet more profound? The poet Derjavan, attempting to express this concept of God, writes in part, "Being above all beings, whom none can comprehend, and none explore, who fillest existence with thyself alone, embracing, all-supporting, ruling over. Being whom we call God, and know no more." Out of this absoluteness, manifestation comes into being. The Absolute veils himself with a gossamer veil of spirit matter, for the very act of becoming polarizes his nature, and for the first time there appear spirit and matter. There can be no manifestation, however rarefied and spiritual, without these two poles, positive and negative, of eternal being. From the highest divine level to what appears to be the densest physical, God clothes his being in ever denser garments, woven from the woof and warp of this dual essence of himself. Reality becomes more and more obscure, and ultimate truth becomes broken into many fragments. With this concept in mind, who can say where reality ends and unreality begins? If spirit and matter are thus dual aspects of deity, then it must be conceded that each shares his reality, for each comes into existence simultaneously. The degree of our claim to distinguish the unreal from the real must be contingent upon our recognition of this basic truth, namely the polarity of all manifestation. Where now are those who see in this world of objectivity only illusion, or those who would relegate everything below spirit to unreality? Spirit itself, to come into existence at all, must set itself off from the ultimate by a separating film of attenuated matter. We are inclined to think of reality as toward unity, and unreality toward separateness. Unity and separateness must be a matter of the direction of our vision. Unity looks inward toward ultimate being, diversity or separateness looks outward along the radii of manifestation. Reality embraces both directions. The illusion, if such there be, is in the inadequacy of our own minds to evaluate properly objects and events of the objective world, and to distinguish them from our own fancies and hallucinations. Moreover, the human senses, being limited by their own vibratory capacities, see objects very incompletely, thus creating images in our minds which are far from reality. Illusion would seem to arise from the tendency to confuse our own imperfect thought forms with those images created by the divine intelligence. Truth is that concept which lines up with reality on any level of manifestation. We can only know truth in the degree of our ability to perceive reality. All truth below absolute or ultimate truth can be only partial truth. We may go so far as to say that any truth which our minds can know is relative truth, nor must we allow our minds to fall into the error of assuming that partial or incomplete truth is untruth. Surely in the fullness of time, as the finite is swallowed up in the infinite, partial and relative truths will be swallowed up in ultimate truth. Time and space will disappear into eternity and infinity. Manifestation returns to absolute being. So the serpent swallows its tail. Being and becoming. We now look at our problem along another radius and consider the relationship between the idea of being and of becoming. Being would seem to suggest a state of existence in which there is always tranquility, bliss, and perfection. Becoming suggests movement, effort, and growth. One would assume a goal of life which is fixed and final, the other a progress toward that goal. Yet if we assume that being is the goal of humanity and becoming a movement toward it, then we must think of humanity as having fallen from being. Being is changeless and eternal. Becoming is of the essence of time and motion. Becoming is the evolutionary process toward being, postulating a fall from being, and that descent taking the form of an arc. Becoming is the ascent toward the apex of being, an unfoldment of what we are into what we shall be. Symbolically, being is a point The potentiality of infinite possibility becoming is the line or radius extending toward infinite attainment. The statement is often heard, "We are becoming what we are." This statement is not actually true. If it were, we should be standing still, or at least going around in a circle and returning to our starting point. Where then would be our progress? The actual meaning would seem to be, we are becoming actually what we are potentially. Life seems to be a series of goals. As soon as one goal is attained, it disappears and another looms, as if the state of being which is our goal of becoming is itself progressing toward a new state of being. We complete our cycle to a new goal, but a goal which has itself moved to a more exalted position, an endless spiral of becoming. Heaven. An acceptance of this idea should expand our idea of the goal of life and remove the thought of finality. Surely one of the sources of criticism against Christian doctrinism is its teaching that mankind will one day after death reach a state wherein progress, as we understand it, comes to a standstill forever. Every man will have reached a goal, varying according to his particular state of moral, intellectual, and spiritual development, which state is fixed and final. There is postulated a place, heaven or hell, in which the soul basks in a state of eternal bliss or is damned to torment and torture forever. Could we envision the goal of humanity as a state in which every individual will reach only a partial degree of perfection and thereafter be condemned to remain in status quo throughout all eternity? Surely after a few million years, even of heavenly bliss, some ungrateful souls would become restless and long for a chance to work, struggle, and even suffer again to evolve within themselves additional powers of perfection. This very idea of eternal stagnation must be abhorrent to the human mind, where not even the motion of time could relieve the monotony of eternal changelessness. What a spectacle of unfinished hopes and purposes! We envision then a concept of the universe which should be acceptable both to science and to theology, for the physical universe will be seen as God in manifestation. And when we realize that manifestation is dual, embracing spirit and matter as opposite poles of one reality, we shall understand that everything that exists is made up of a union of these two essential elements of reality, life and form. To deity looking outward upon his manifestation, the universe must be seen as the positive idea and spirit the negative, while to man looking upward, spirit must seem positive and the objective world negative, each in itself good. For God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Genesis 1:31. This brings us to a thought which must be the underlying basis of all philosophy, and that is that God or life alternately brings himself or itself out of the state of non-manifestation into manifestation, non-existence going out from itself into existence. Here, pure being or non-existence is the negative aspect, while existence or becoming is the positive. Yet the change from one state to the other brings no change in its essential reality. We might think of this outward or downward flow of God's life as involution, wherein the divine ideation becomes more and more buried in denser and denser matter. Then, upon reaching the nadir of its outgoing arc, the direction of its flow is reversed, and the return motion begins. This new direction of life is evolution. In this process, life builds form after form, moving ever nearer to the divine image. Mankind, in this process of becoming, moves from matter toward spirit, spirit being the direction and the doorway through which the individual returns to his source, and through which all manifestation returns to pure being. The great cycle of manifestation is ended. There follows a period of non-manifestation, wherein all objectivity is withdrawn into a state of pure being in preparation for the outgoing of a new and more glorious cycle of becoming. We may find a visual exemplification of this sublime idea in the movements of the heavenly bodies, wherein planets revolve about suns, suns about stars, and entire universes of stars revolving about some unknown center. And beyond this, our own stellar universe or galaxy may be found countless millions of galaxies, some in the process of being born, others on the way to disintegration and extinction. What symbol could so appropriately embody so sublime a conception of our universe in its cyclic period of manifestation as the serpent swallowing its tail? We see this cyclic pattern repeated on lower levels. The year with its 4 seasons, spring sees the outpouring of universal life forces, and all dormant seeds and forms spring to life. At midsummer they flower into maturity, at autumn ripen into fruit and seed. Winter brings a withdrawal of the vital forces, a slowing down of growth, a storing up of food and energy for a new cycle of growth and a period of dormancy and rest. The day follows the cyclic period at briefer intervals. Man's life on earth repeats the same pattern. He comes out of the invisible into incarnation as a babe, as a seed planted in an earthly body. The morning springtime of life brings forth the vital energies of growth. Noonday summer develops the inherent pattern of beauty and flower and bloom in physical and mental characteristics. Afternoon autumn brings the harvest of personal perfections. His inherent characteristics and latent powers have matured, evolved into active mental and spiritual maturity, understanding, sympathy, wisdom, and judgment. The night-winter of life withdraws his vital powers. There comes the departure of the personality manifestation through the process called death into the invisible world. Then follows a period of gestation and assimilation of the experience of life and the preparation for a new incarnation and a new cycle of life's activities. We may view the cycle of earth life as part of a still greater cycle of the divine spirit. We have followed the cycle of the personal life from birth to death. We now follow the course of the larger cycle of the soul or ego, that inner or true self which persists through countless manifestations or incarnations in a series of personalities. Without getting involved in the processes, we may say that the soul of man, hereinafter called the ego as the individualized spirit, descends directly from the spiritual world to begin his long pilgrimage in the worlds of matter and consciousness. The reason and purpose of this pilgrimage through the worlds of manifestation is that he may, through his contact with and conquest of his environment, develop his inherent characteristics into conscious powers. For many incarnations during which his entire attention is directed to the development of a strong and rugged personality, he has completely lost sight of his spiritual origin and even of life's purpose and his own destiny. After countless incarnations, he gradually awakens to the realization that he is essentially a spiritual being inhabiting a body of flesh, for the sole purpose of growing into the likeness of his Father. With this awareness comes an expansion of his own consciousness and a growing understanding of life and his relationship with others. More and more, he begins to identify himself with his ego. He begins to recognize his inner unity with others, and with that sense of unity, a growing realization of brotherhood, until his world expands to take in all living things. From within his being, a great compassion and impersonal love surges up, uniting him with life on all levels. He begins to lose his sense of separateness, and yet with the realization of unity with all, his own individual center becomes more definitely and divinely real. Here again, these cycles within cycles, incarnations swallowed up in spiritual being, exemplify the symbol of the serpent swallowing its tail.
Thanks for watching the Wisdom Rocker. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.